Hey everybody, Helen Nelson here. I want to show you guys how to process a simple topographic survey. There's a million ways to do it, but I just want to show you how I do it. Maybe, hopefully, some of these things can help you guys out to process your data a little bit quicker. Something I use a lot are key commands. I find them a lot more efficient. So you might not see me selecting all these buttons up here because I don't use them. But I will tell you which keys I'm keying in as I am working. Also, you'll see me type them in down below as well. Okay, so first of all, I'm using Autocad Civil 3D 2018. I'm using metric because I am working in Canada. So when you first get your data files from a surveyor, you should get, at the very least, you'll get notes and a CSV. That's an Excel file. So that's comma separated value. It's just a format in the way that you save your Excel files. Generally, when I get them up north here, you can get them in different formats. Like sometimes you'll see an XYZ. Sometimes you'll see a point name here, but generally I've been working up here 10 years now and I've always gotten them the same way. So we're getting your point number here, northing, easting, elevation, and description. So that's P, N, E, Z, D. Usually you'll get a base for your first point, and I'll usually remove this and just do a save as. I do keep a copy of that on file in case we do need it. So I'll get that out of there first, so then I can bring in all my point numbers. The way that I bring it in, usually it doesn't like to see any letters. Sometimes you'll have a control point and they'll call it CP 100, whatever. You want to get rid of those before you import them into AutoCAD. So I'm just checking out, make sure there's no spaces. If you do end up with a gap here, and you bring these in, you'll notice you'll lose these. It'll skip over them. So you want to make sure there's no gaps or anything like that. So this asks you to save it a million times. Okay, so now we're going to bring in our points. So first thing, go to do points, point creation tools. And you'll see here we have an import points button. So I'm going to select that CSV file right here, add files. It is in my Dropbox. I have a little practice folder created. So we'll see right here, you want to choose a CSV file. So bring in that TOPO one. Now generally something that I do, a practice I like to use, is I like to keep everything named the same. So if I have a CSV file that's called TOPO one, generally there'll be a date and things associated to that, a surveyor's initials, things like that. But I want to keep everything consistent. So if I have a file that's named one thing, I want my point group to be named that, my surface, so on and so on, so we can always trace it back to its source. Okay. All right. So like I said, that will be PNEZD. So right here, we're going to be telling AutoCAD how to read that file. So it's going to be point number, northing, easting, elevation, description. So you select that down here. And it will be comma delimited file. I always create a point group. It just makes them easier to work with down the road. And also, once again, you'd be able to trace these back to the file from which they originated. If you do not select a point group, it will just default to all points. So we bring those in. And now they're somewhere in the world. So usually I'll type in Z and E for zoom extents. I'll change my scale down here just to make these smaller so I can see them so they're easier to work with. Okay, so now we have a bunch of points and we have to get to work to connecting them. So what we'll want to do is we'll want to create layers for crest, toe, brake line, and road shoulder. I looked through the file and those were the items that we had in there. So you open your layer properties right here. And to create usually I'll create a new layer filter. So we'll go new group filter and we'll just call this TOPO 1. I'll drag my 0 on in there. Okay, so we'll make a new point, a new layer, and we'll call that crest. Right here you can change your color, your line type, line weight, everything. Usually I do my crest red. I'll always use continuous. I usually only use broken lines if I'm doing something that's underground, or I usually try to stick with the continuous lines, especially if I'm using 3D polylines, because a lot of times if you do use a broken line with a 3D polyline, you'll see some distortion there. Crest toe. Toe will do blue. I have some of my commands popping up here on the other screen. And then we'll do arrowed shoulder. We'll keep that one white. And a break line as well we'll be needing. All right, here we go, break line. And we'll do a gray here. Okay. All right, we'll close it up. So maybe we'll start with our crests. Close it out. So I just made that layer curved, so that'll be, if I'm drawing anything here now, it will be in my break line, in my crest layer. So I usually like to turn my snaps when I'm doing this to node only. So your node is what your little x's, your little points will be on that node snap. So when you are creating a topographic survey, you can either use lines. So I'm just typing in the word line here. So line, the z value can change from one point to another. However, they're only in one segments, okay? The second thing you could use is a polyline. So you type in PL for your polyline. Now you can do multiple segments for this, but you'll see that it's all at one elevation. So if I start at this elevation of 347.54, my entire line is going to be at that elevation. So the optimal line type to use for a topographic survey like this would be a 3D polyline. So you type in your 3P. So you're going to be able to create a line all along the shoulder, for instance, and the elevation will change for each node that you're snapping to. So if I select this now and we just do a quick object viewer, you can see that there's change in the Z values there. All right, so a little trick I picked up along the way. Like I said, there's a million ways to do this, but this is how I do it. I open up my Excel, and I'll go here to formulas. And what I use is, this is a new computer, none of my defaults are set up, but concatenate. So basically it joins several text strings into one text string. So it'll take my points here and put them in, my values here and put them in an order I want them to be in. Okay, so when I put in my command for 3D polyline, it'll ask me to enter my values. So the order we want them to be in is easting, so that's C. Then you put in comma, then northing, so that's our B, then comma, and then our elevation, which is D. So the way that I remember it is can't beat that. Can't beat that. I don't know, I'm a weirdo, but that's how I remember it. All right, so there's our string of values there. So we can apply this to the entire file. Then I'll go here and I usually will sort this from A to Z. And it'll ask me to expand the selection, so that'll take all of these columns with it. So now we can go down here when we have our berm crest. So it depends on how it's surveyed. Some surveyors will survey up and down one side of the berm and then back up the other side, and then you'll get a nice line. But sometimes they'll just, it does make sense because it would be easier for them in the field to take a shot on the west side and one on the east side, and back and forth and back and forth. So you'll get more of a zigzag pattern. I find it is still helpful because then you can see where all your points are instead of just blindly kind of reading them and picking them through from that mass of points that we saw. Okay, so I select all of these, all my berm crests, and I'll hold Control C to copy. Then we'll go back to my AutoCAD Civil 3D, and we'll type in 3P. We already have the crest layer selected, and I'll type in Control V, and it'll connect all those berm crests for me. As you can see, we have all of the crests selected from the job. So it does help you to see things a little bit clearer, but there's still obviously a lot of work to be done. So we have one berm crest over here, so we'll type in 3P for 3D polyline. We'll select these nodes that we need. And usually to close out the command, I'll just type C, enter. We have another berm crest right here. This one looks like it's just a straight line. We can type in X for explode. It'll explode these entities. I'm going to get rid of this line right here, delete. And then we'll delete this bad boy right here. We can get rid of all these ones we know don't belong. Then I'll select similar. Right click, select similar. That will get me all these line segments again, and I'll just type J for join because that'll make it easier to delete them out. I can select it as one big segment instead of all kinds of itty bitty little pieces. Okay, so we have another one up here. I'm a zoomer, by the way. I don't pan very much, but I'll try to pan a little bit more just to make it easy on the head. Okay, so connect all these bad boys right here. And see, I closed that one out a bit early. So if you want to add another vertex, you can just kind of click on it here. Make a liar out of me now, watch. Come on. Okay. Should be able to add a vertex there, but sometimes it just hates me. Especially when I'm recording things. Add vertex. Yeah, just... Alright, let's do that again. So this is the joys of AutoCAD. You'll see this kind of stuff happening a lot. Just type in C for close. Something you might use every day and it might work perfect. You'll get into work one day and it won't work, and that'll be the day you have a big deadline, so you'll be kind of beating your head against the wall, but I mean, that's all a part of it. You got to be able to problem solve on your toes. Now, something I just noticed up here, I think I clicked a point, or I clicked off of a point. That'll create a big issue for you, because when you go to, see, there it is right there, because when you go to create your surface, that will have snapped like an elevation of 0, and you'll have a big spike in your surface. So it's definitely an issue that you want to keep an eye out for, but there are ways to check for it near the end if it does happen. So we have these grips here, these little blue grips, so you can just kind of grab on that and snap it right back on that point there. So I think I missed a spot here as well. 3P, enter. If you want to join these segments together, you just type in J for join, and then you select your segments. Enter. And now we have one entity there for that berm crest. Looks like we have another one right here. Wrapping around down this way. A lot of this is kind of going to come from just your experience. Because you've got to be able to visualize this in the field. I would definitely recommend anyone who's going to be serious about drafting in the survey world to get out and spend some time in the field, because otherwise this is just going to look like a bunch of elastic bands, as my one friend Shirley used to call them. But being able to visualize how this works in the field and how the real world applications, it's going to help you out a lot in being an effective drafter. All right, so we've got one right there. So I'm joining these all together again to get rid of all these little odds and ends we don't need. Now this is yeah, like you have to be able to interpret, like, I mean, this just seems a little bit off to me here. It just ends here like that. I think what I would do here is explode this and bring this down here. Bring this up here. I'll select similar. We'll join them again. I think that makes a lot more sense to me. All right, so we have these berm crests completed. Now we'll move on to our next berm toes. So we'll copy all these, Control C. We need to change our layer to toe. Type in 3P, Control V. Here we go. So we'll explode these and we'll get rid of what we know definitely doesn't belong. Bam. This one. Yeah, I can see here, see how the toe wraps around. So we know that these definitely shouldn't be joined together. Some of this will kind of become more clear as you're working on it as well. Like something won't make sense, and then as you progress with it, it'll become a bit more clear to you exactly what is going on in the field. Okay, so most of this is good. We got a couple here we got to fix up. So we'll connect these all together. Just click into those nodes. and C, enter to close it out. So now I can get rid of that. And I'm just pressing delete. I'm selecting these. I'm just pressing the delete button on my keyboard, by the way. You can type in E for erase as well, but and then just select the objects. But I just click on them and press my delete button. Easy peasy. All right, so you want to save. One thing about AutoCAD, you should save often because if it shuts down on you, it's horrible. It really sucks. All right, so let's see what else we got here. We got some break lines. So you can see here the surveyor, he shot a string of break lines and then he shot a second string. So you want to process these by number. Typically, if you're doing a survey, you should pick up berm toe 1, berm toe 2. It just makes it a lot easier for the drafter. You won't end up with a bunch of things all stuck together there. It'll be easier to define where your lines are. Okay, so I'll type in 3P here. Same thing, Control V. See where our break lines are. Kind of explode them here. We know this one doesn't belong, doesn't make sense. Select similar, join, and they were done for those break lines. Check it out again, open our Excel file. Missed one there. Let's try that again. Where do we got? One extra one down here, see? 3P, J, and all right, break line number 2. Control copy, so on and so forth. So I'm going to continue processing this line work here, and I'll be back once I'm finished it all. Okay, I have all the line work created here. So you'll see we have our toes are blue, our crests are red. So we have some ditches here, some berms, a road shoulder. Next thing we're going to do is create a surface out of this data. So we will, usually I want to name everything the same like I discussed earlier. So I'll copy, Control C, my point group name, which is the same as my CSV name. And I'll create a surface. My surface name, Control V, will be TOPO 1 as well. Style, contours, 2 and 10 meter backgrounds. You can change this to contours and triangles. In order for you to trim your surface, it has to be triangulated. So I'll usually change that right there. So we'll open up our surface definition. We're going to add our point group. So if we right click and add, it'll be TOPO 1. So we should see a surface generate here. First thing I'll do is I'll usually select this and right click it and display order. I'll send it to the back so I can see all my lines and points underneath there. Next we want to add the break lines. So this will when we'll be adding, our crests, our toes, and that'll help this surface to triangulate properly. So just say okay to here. Usually you can either select all of these individually, if you have some buildings or something in there that you don't want in your surface, but we want all this in our surface, so we can just select it all. Right, and you'll see it's changed a little bit there. So we can take a quick look. If we click on this, right click Object Viewer, we can change it to Conceptual, and we can kind of get a lay for the land there. So we're almost done. The next thing we're going to want to do is here's our road shoulder. We can see we have some triangulation here that's unnecessary. I mean, there was no survey data taken in this area, so we want to get rid of it. So if I click this and I say edit surface and delete lines, you can just select these unwanted lines and get rid of them. I just call this part kind of cleaning up your surface. just to make it a little bit more of a realistic representation of what was captured. Okay. I'll get rid of this one as well. Add a surface delete line. Okay, so we have a good look here now with our object viewer. We have a pretty clean surface. You can see your ditches here, your berms here. There's no major spikes in here. If you had not clicked to a point, like, and you were hitting a zero elevation or something, that's when you're going to see these massive spikes in your surface. And then you can identify those and correct them. We could use the surface now to run volumes. If we go back in and we fill in one of these ditches, we can compare it to the surface. We could run volumes. You know, we can create a nice drawing here, just representing the surface. You know, you could do some nice contours. You could label these. There's a lot of things you could do with it, but this is just the basics on how to process a topographic survey. This is Helen Nelson. This is my first video, so sorry if it's a little bit not as linear as I would have liked, but we'll try better next time, and I hope this helped. Take it easy.